Answering questions about Croatia's future accession to the EU, comparisons of problems were made with recent members Bulgaria and Romania. Britain's Foreign Secretary outlined a dividing line in the Balkan state between the EU and national affairs.
That's a delicate balance between the demands of the acquis and the ability of, or the way in which countries run their own domestic affairs is something that has to be handled sensitively. But it's certainly the case that action on corruption, I think you mentioned, that's very, very important for any aspirant member state. There's continuing issues in respect of the Romanian and Bulgarian entry and reform programs in those countries, and there'll certainly be an important focus on that in the Croatian case.
He said that all countries were different and had to meet a minimum standard to accede to the EU.
The three areas that you have highlighted in your quotation are all three very important. They will all be very important in the Croatian case as well as in other cases. But the precise form in which judgment is made, in which benchmarks are set, in which standards are set, obviously needs to be appropriate to the Croatian case because, as you recognised in your question, it's not exactly the same situation in Croatia as it was or is in Romania and Bulgaria.
He feels that since the accession of Bulgaria and Romania, the EU membership process has been tightened up.
There have been significant strengthening of the accession process since Romania and Bulgaria came in. For example, and this speaks directly to your point, Chapter 23, there's a new chapter addressing directly judicial reform, fundamental rights and anti-corruption. That is a new chapter in the acquis, and so that has to be negotiated successfully before Croatia can come in. There's also, secondly, recognition that judicial and public administration reform, corruption and organised crime must be tackled early and vigorously in preparation for accession. That speaks partially to your concern. Thirdly, there are now rigorous benchmarks for each and every chapter, some of which I think you wrote to us and we've sent back to you those benchmarks. Just to be clear, they require candidates for European membership to meet minimum standards before the negotiations are opened and then also before they are closed. Fourthly, there is now a requirement that we see implementation in some important areas, not just the passing of laws. And obviously some of you were in Croatia last week or the week before, and you'll have teased out the difference between passing a law and actually implementing it. I think that the new process that exists does recognise the need for implementation as well as passage of laws. And fifthly and finally, there's been a change in the way in which, in the approach as regards target dates, which is that aspirant countries can have target dates, but we don't have we as the European Union don't have legally binding dates by which an accession will happen. And I think those are recognition that the issues you're raising are profound and appropriate and right to be raised. They're an attempt to address those issues. And obviously the accession process needs to be fair to all countries, but also needs to respect the fact that countries are different because, to quote you, they're not exactly the same.
He believes Croatia is one of the Balkan states with much to offer the European Union.
Croatia is a country that potentially has a huge amount to offer to the European Union. It's a country that's one of the wealthier countries of the Balkans. Our vision of the future of the Western Balkans is that they should all be members of the European Union. I think that's the best way to achieve stability. And I think that there is one other very, very important point. There's a danger in the enlargement process, and we felt this in the 1970s, remember, is that those who are inside the club just say, well, look, let's see how high you can jump higher, until we let you in. What's happening now is not simply saying to the Croatians of this world, let's see how high you can jump. Britain, the European Commission, other countries are working actively to help build the sort of capacity in Croatia that will allow it to be the most productive possible member of the European Union.
While some argue EU enlargement will be detrimental, Britain feels it will strengthen and enhance our relationship with neighbouring states.